I had always wanted to spend a weekend in a cabin in the woods, away from the noise and stress of the city. I found a cheap rental online and booked it without hesitation. The pictures looked cozy and rustic, and the reviews were mostly positive. I packed my bags and drove to the location, eager to enjoy some peace and quiet. The cabin was located at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by tall trees and thick bushes. It looked exactly like the photos, except for the faded paint and the broken window. I shrugged it off and entered the cabin, hoping to find a clean and comfortable interior. I was disappointed. The cabin was dusty and musty, with cobwebs in every corner and stains on the furniture. The kitchen was a mess, with dirty dishes piled up in the sink and expired food in the fridge. The bathroom was worse, with moldy tiles and a leaky faucet. The bedroom was the only decent room, with a large bed and a closet. I decided to stay there and ignore the rest of the cabin. I unpacked my things and lay down on the bed, feeling tired from the long drive. I closed my eyes and tried to relax, but I couldn't. I heard strange noises outside, like rustling leaves and snapping branches. I told myself it was just the wind, or maybe some animals. I tried to ignore them and fall asleep, but I couldn't. I felt uneasy, like someone was watching me. I got up and checked the window, hoping to see nothing but darkness. I was wrong. I saw a figure standing in the shadows, staring at me. It was a man, or something that looked like a man. He was tall and thin, with pale skin and dark hair. He wore a dirty coat and a hat, and he held a knife in his hand. He smiled at me, showing his yellow teeth and his red eyes. I screamed and ran to the door, hoping to escape. I was too late. He was faster than me, and he blocked my way. He grabbed me by the hair and dragged me to the floor. He raised his knife and stabbed me in the chest, over and over again. He laughed as he did it, enjoying my pain and fear. I felt my life slipping away, and I wished I had never come to this cabin. I wondered who he was, and why he did this to me. I wondered if anyone would ever find me, or if I would be forgotten. I wondered if this was the end, or if there was something worse waiting for me. But then, something unexpected happened. I heard a loud bang, and a flash of light. I saw him fall to the ground, blood gushing from his head. I saw a gun in his hand, and a hole in his temple. He had shot himself, by accident or on purpose, I didn't know. He was dead, and I was alive. I felt a surge of relief and gratitude, mixed with shock and horror. I crawled to the door, hoping to find help. I saw a car parked outside, with a police officer inside. He had heard my scream, and followed the dirt road to the cabin. He had seen the man attack me, and tried to intervene. He had saved my life, and I owed him everything. He rushed to me, and called for backup. He wrapped a blanket around me, and checked my wounds. He told me I was going to be okay, and that I was safe now. He told me his name was Officer Jones, and that he was here to help. He told me I was brave, and that I had survived. I thanked him, and cried in his arms. I felt a glimmer of hope, and a chance to heal. I had survived a nightmare, and I was ready to wake up. I had always loved camping, especially in Arizona, where the weather was warm and the scenery was stunning. I decided to take a solo trip to one of the campsites I found online, called Zane Grey RV Village. It was near Sedona and the Red Rock attractions, and it had a creekside path and lots of shade. It sounded perfect for a relaxing weekend. I packed my tent, sleeping bag, and some food and drove to the campsite. It was easy to find, and I checked in at the office. The staff was friendly and helpful, and they gave me a map of the campsite and a key to the restroom and shower facilities. They told me I could choose any spot I liked, as long as it was not reserved. I drove around the campsite, looking for a nice spot. The campsite was not very crowded, and there were plenty of spaces to choose from. I saw some RVs, trailers, and cabins, but I preferred to sleep in a tent. I found a spot near the creek, under a large tree. It was quiet and secluded, and I liked it. I set up my tent and unpacked my things. I decided to take a walk along the creek and enjoy the nature. I put on my hiking boots and grabbed my water bottle and camera. I locked my car and headed to the creek. The creek was clear and cool, and I could see fish swimming in it. I followed the path along the creek, admiring the views of the red rocks and the green trees. I took some pictures and breathed in the fresh air. I felt happy and peaceful. I walked for about an hour, and then I decided to turn back. It was getting dark, and I wanted to make a fire and cook some dinner. I retraced my steps, following the path back to the campsite. But something was wrong. I couldn't find my spot. I couldn't find my tent, my car, or my tree. I couldn't find anything familiar. I was lost. I panicked. How could this happen? I was sure I followed the same path. I checked the map, but it didn't help. I didn't know where I was. I tried to calm down and think. Maybe I took a wrong turn somewhere. Maybe I could find someone who could help me. I looked around, hoping to see another camper or a staff member. But I saw no one. The campsite was deserted. There were no lights, no sounds, no signs of life. It was like a ghost town. I felt a chill run down my spine. I had a bad feeling about this. I felt like I was in a horror movie, and something terrible was going to happen. I wished I had never come to this campsite. I wished I had stayed home. I decided to keep walking, hoping to find a way out. I walked along the creek, looking for a road or a trail. I walked for what seemed like hours, but I found nothing. I was trapped. I started to cry. I was scared and alone, and I didn't know what to do. I had no phone, no flashlight, no weapon. I had nothing to protect me from the dark and the unknown. I felt hopeless. Then I heard a noise. A loud, piercing scream. It came from behind me, and it made me jump. I turned around, and I saw something that made me scream too. It was a man, or something that looked like a man. He was naked and covered in blood. He had long, matted hair and a beard, and he had scars and wounds all over his body. He had no eyes, only empty sockets. He had a mouth full of sharp teeth, and he was holding a machete. He saw me, and he smiled. He started to run towards me, waving his machete. He was fast, and he was angry. He wanted to kill me. I ran. I ran as fast as I could, away from him. I ran along the creek, looking for a place to hide. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs ached. I ran until I saw light. I saw light in the distance, and I hoped it was a sign of help. I ran towards it, hoping to find someone who could save me. I ran until I reached it, and I realized it was a car. It was a car parked on the road, with its headlights on. It was a police car, and there was an officer inside. He had heard my scream, and followed the dirt road to the campsite. He had seen the man chase me, and tried to intervene. He had saved my life, and I owed him everything. He got out of the car, and pointed his gun at the man. He shouted at him to drop his weapon, and to stay where he was. He told me to get behind him, and to stay calm. He told me his name was Officer Smith, and that he was here to help. He told me I was brave, and that I had survived. The man ignored him, and kept running towards us. He raised his machete, and he swung it at the officer. He missed, and the officer shot him. He shot him in the chest, and he fell to the ground. He was dead, and I was alive. I felt a surge of relief and gratitude, mixed with shock and horror. I collapsed to the ground, and cried. The officer came to me, and called for backup. He wrapped a blanket around me, and checked my wounds. He told me I was going to be okay, and that I was safe now. He told me he would take me to the hospital, and that he would find out what happened. He told me I was lucky, and that I had survived. I thanked him, and hugged him. I felt a glimmer of hope, and a chance to heal. I had survived a nightmare, and I was ready to wake up. I had always wanted to visit Alaska, especially in the winter, when the snow was thick and the northern lights were bright. I found a cheap flight online and booked it without hesitation. The plan was to stay in a cabin in the woods, near a small town called Fairbanks. It sounded like a perfect getaway. I packed my bags and flew to Alaska. I rented a car at the airport and drove to the cabin. It was located in a remote area, surrounded by snow-covered trees and mountains. It looked cozy and charming, and the reviews were mostly positive. I entered the cabin, hoping to find a warm and comfortable interior. I was not disappointed. The cabin was clean and cozy, with a fireplace, a kitchen, a bathroom, and a bedroom. It had everything I needed for a relaxing stay. I unpacked my things and made a fire. I decided to stay in for the night and enjoy the view of the stars and the northern lights. I cooked some dinner and ate it by the fire. I read a book and listened to some music. I felt happy and peaceful. I decided to go to bed early and wake up early the next day. I wanted to explore the town and the nature. I had a lot of things to do and see. I went to the bedroom and lay down on the bed. It was soft and warm, and I felt sleepy. I closed my eyes and drifted off to sleep, dreaming of the adventures ahead. I woke up to a loud noise. It sounded like a gunshot, and it came from outside. I jumped out of bed and ran to the window, hoping to see nothing but snow. I was wrong. I saw a man lying on the ground, bleeding. He was wearing a parka and a hat, and he had a rifle in his hand. He looked like a hunter, and he looked dead. I gasped and backed away from the window, feeling scared and confused. Who was he, and what was he doing here? How did he die, and who killed him? Was there someone else out there, and were they coming for me? I had no answers, and I had no time to think. I heard another noise, this time from the door. It sounded like someone was trying to break in, and they were not friendly. I heard a voice, a deep and raspy voice, saying something I couldn't understand. It sounded like a foreign language, or maybe a code. It sounded like a threat. I panicked. I looked around, hoping to find a weapon or a phone. I found nothing. I had no way to defend myself or call for help. I was alone and vulnerable. I wished I had never come to this cabin. I wished I had stayed home. I decided to hide, hoping to avoid the intruder. I ran to the closet and locked myself in. I hoped they wouldn't find me, or hear me. I hoped they would leave me alone. But they didn't. They found me, and they heard me. They broke the door, and they opened the closet. They saw me, and they grabbed me. They were two men, or something that looked like men. They were tall and muscular, with dark skin and hair. They wore masks and gloves, and they had guns and knives. They looked like mercenaries, and they looked angry. They dragged me out of the closet and threw me on the floor. They pointed their guns at me and shouted at me, saying something I couldn't understand. They seemed to want something from me, something I didn't have. They seemed to think I knew something I didn't know. They seemed to have a mission I didn't understand. They tortured me. They beat me, and cut me, and burned me. They asked me questions, and I answered them. I told them the truth, and I begged them to stop. I told them I was just a tourist, and I had nothing to do with anything. I told them I didn't know anything, and I had nothing to give them. I told them I was innocent, and I wanted to live. But they didn't believe me. They didn't care. They kept torturing me, and they enjoyed it. They laughed as they did it, having fun with my pain and fear. I felt my life slipping away, and I wished I had never come to this cabin. I wondered who they were, and what they wanted. I wondered why they chose me, and what I had done wrong. I wondered if anyone would ever find me, or if I would be forgotten. I wondered if this was the end, or if there was something worse waiting for me. I never found out. They finished me off and left me there, bleeding and dying. They walked out of the cabin, talking to each other. They got in their car and drove away, leaving no trace. They disappeared into the night, looking for their next target.